Hello, everyone. I can see this close to like over 100 people, and I'm guessing many of you are going to join as well. So my name is Vivek Ramachandran. I've been in cybersecurity for a very long time. Some of you might have used some of my work. Others who haven't, well, that's what the whole talk is about. A very long, winding journey of how I started as a hacker. Then became an entrepreneur, and of course now I'm like a hacker entrepreneur because I'm actually doing both. So this photo might be very intriguing because you are actually seeing there are more people than just me on it. So just to explain this, on the top left is, as you can see, me super young. And this was probably shot somewhere around 2006, 2007, when I was maybe 2 to 3 years out of college, working on wireless security at Airtight Networks in Pune. And then the later picture over here with all of these fine folks is when my second company, Pen Tester Academy, got acquired by INE and Providence Equity based in the US. So this is really the Providence Equity team and the CEO of INE and the CISO of INE. So really wanted to compare and contrast between me being a solitary hacker on the top left and on the bottom right, kind of tracing through that whole entrepreneurial journey. I'll try to make this a little interactive, maybe ask you some questions in between. Okay, so this is in my mind like a very summarized kind of recap of what I've done over all these years. But I'm going to take you through that journey, as I said, in a much more long, winding way. I've been over 20 years in cybersecurity, 12 years as an entrepreneur. I think when I got interested in cybersecurity was even before I went into engineering. So I was preparing, just like many of you guys, for your entrance exams. And this was the year 1999. And, these very big attacks on Yahoo had happened, DDoS attacks. And at that point, just 3-4 years before that was when I even, had my very first computer. So keep in mind, those days back in India, it was super expensive to buy a computer. I still remember, my parents had to probably shell out almost 2 lakhs back in the day to get that compact Presario computer imported from America. And they absolutely had no clue what I was going to do with it. But anyway, got the whole VSNL slip connection, slowly started exploring what the internet was. And these were all back in the day when, you still even did mail using, Linux inboxes and stuff like that. So fast forward 1999, as I said, I heard about all of those DDoS attacks and I was preparing for entrance exams. I was very curious. And one of the news articles mentioned that the hacker who had done it, Mixter, he had written this attack tool called TFN, or Tribal Flood Network, and which was used by other attackers. So anyway, did a little bit of searching, found the tool, downloaded it, opened up, the tar archive, and I saw all of this C code. And at that point, I absolutely did not know any form of programming. But I was very intrigued as to how a single person could have so much power to bring down these crazy, ginormous websites. So I quickly started digging, while preparing for my entrance exams, started teaching myself C. Then I started downloading all of these magazines, called those, back in those days, they were called like Virus Zines and E-Zines and all of that. So I downloaded Code Breakers, suddenly heard that, they had something called a Toad virus, which was a very simple COM file infector. Started teaching myself a little bit of assembly. By that time, cleared the entrance exams, joined, IIT. And you won't believe this, in my whole batch, if I remember, of around 130 people, I'm not kidding. And this was 2000, right? Almost 24 years back. Only 10 of us had ever seen or used a computer. So most people, when we walked into the computer center, barely even knew how to switch on a computer, as unbelievable as it kind of sounds. So I went into electronics and communications, but because I knew a bit of computers, I wanted to keep that lead. Fast forward 2 to 3 years, I was doing electronics, teaching myself computer science, and you can clearly imagine how painful it can be, right? To literally do two curriculums at the same time. My big breakthrough was in the third year. We used to have 3 month summer vacations, and a lot of people used to apply for foreign internships. And for me, it was very difficult because I was in electronics and just teaching myself computer science. But I still applied to all the computer science internships around the world. So I must have applied to over 2,000 places. And finally, there was this one university called Hochschule for Technik, in Zurich, or rather Rapperswil, which is a little further away from Zurich, who responded. And they basically said, hey, we only have one project, which is on Wi-Fi security, WLANs. But we would want to see some paper or, something that you may have written. And think about it, right? Barely we had seen computers. Wireless LANs didn't exist in India back then. So I had never seen an access point. I did not have a laptop. I had not even seen a laptop. And this is 2003, 20 years back. But what I did was, just like many of you probably would also have done, in a very jogad way, I read through some 15, 20 papers which I could find online and created this big summary paper, on Wi-Fi security, which I then sent to that professor. So he got very impressed with the summary paper. I mean, he probably assumed that I had already done some wireless security or pen testing. And he called me there. And the very first day I went over there, he handed me this laptop. And most of you probably may not even kind of know, you used to have these external PCM-CIA cards, which is what used to do like Wi-Fi. I don't know, anyone has ever used a PCM-CIA card among all of you folks who are here? So the laptops used to have these slots on the right where you literally had to insert these cards, which were as big as a Cadbury bar. Yeah, you should probably just Google it. Anyway, so at that point, I felt, I really had to go ahead and prove myself. Worked super hard. I think I probably spent like 16 hours in the lab every single day, including weekends. And by the end of the whole internship, I had managed to go ahead and, kind of complete the project, which was really Zurich Railways was trying to look at how you could secure Wi-Fi handoffs when a train was passing very fast and maybe people on the train had laptops. So once I succeeded in that, my professor there became very happy. And he literally, told me, hey, you can have the laptop. And that was a very, very big boost for me, right? So when you're young, what you really need is a couple of people who truly, genuinely believe in you, who feel like you can do great things. And, these people can be in the form of a mentor, can be in the form of a professor, a teacher, somebody early when you're working for somebody in a firm, and, they really boost your confidence. So anyway, with that, after I passed out, I worked for a few places, joined Cisco Systems. And Cisco Systems in Bangalore at that time had just started their research and development center in this place called Divyashri Chambers. I don't know if any of you, I know Cisco now has a big campus in Bangalore, but I think back in the day, it was like Divyashri Chambers. I forget where it is. And that is really where I really sat down and, kind of like taught myself like low-level switching, routing, whatnot, learned quite a bit. But very soon I figured out that I didn't have much interest in developing software systems. I was starting to enjoy a lot more breaking software systems. So from there, I got a very lucky break. There was this startup based out of Pune and Silicon Valley called Airtight Networks. And it was, I think, founded by some really fantastic, brilliant people, Praveen Bhagwat, who I would almost credit to be my early mentor, both from, I would say, a hacker perspective, but also as an entrepreneur perspective. Got a chance to work with him directly. And Praveen challenged me at that point, and he basically said, hey Vivek, do you think you could actually break an encryption schema called web cloaking? And if you can do that, then maybe we could even apply to speak at DEF CON. Now, this was 2007. Uh, Imagine at that point, I don't remember anyone from India ever having spoken at DEF CON or Black Hat. So for me, it's probably 26, 27 years old. That was something I was not even expecting would work. But anyway, I worked hard, cracked web cloaking, eventually even found an attack called the Cafe Latte attack. And we submitted to DEF CON and a few other conferences, TourCon and whatnot. And they accepted, and I went at spoke DEF CON main stage. And if I remember, this was 2008, probably, DEF CON 15. And that was, to me, a very, very pivotal moment in my whole career, in my whole life, right? Because once I spoke at DEF CON, almost literally as one of the first Indians, uh, and people, heard me out. People were very appreciative of technologically what we had done and all that. I figured that now I could actually compete with the best in the world, right? And I would say that's a very important realization to kind of have at some point, is you feel like your competition is the world, and not just the people around you, right? It's not your college, it is not the company you work at, it is not your city, it is not, the country you live in. It's really just anyone, who's good and great anywhere in the world. And and I think I have always imbibed that, is my competitor is someone anywhere in the world. And that always has kept me very sharp in anything I've created, anything I've done, because I really feel that competitive spirit, that you have to be the best in the world. Whatever we build, whether me as an individual, as a hacker researching, or now us as a company, with an entire team building, compete with the best in the world, try to build something which is the greatest. Roughly, I think somewhere around that time, I also won the Microsoft Security Shootout contest. I think I was part of the India top 10. 30 or I think 40,000 people had participated, if I remember. And this was literally the first bug bounty that I can ever think about in the whole of probably India, maybe even one of the very early ones in the world. I mean, this was a time when the word bug bounty had not even been coined. And Microsoft put out this contest saying, here is an application, go break it, then tell us how you would fix it. And they had multiple rounds and whatnot around it. Uh, anyway, so once I found the Cafe Latte attack, which was a wireless attack, where I could go ahead and get the web key from just the client, even without an access point, broke web cloaking, did a bunch of other small things at conferences. I quickly realized that this is really what I wanted to do, right? I did not want to go back, be a consultant or be a software engineer or write code. That wasn't thrilling to me anymore. So the only thing was like, hey, could I just go back, do my research, talk at all the top conferences in the world, do really groundbreaking stuff. And unbelievably, that was the time when I decided, okay, I'm going to quit my job and just go back to my parents' home in their basement equivalent, which was basically a mezzanine floor. And based upon that, I was like, okay, let's see what happens. Now, you can well imagine at the age of around 28 to go to your parents and say, I'm going to quit a fantastic paying job, come back to your home, absolutely have no idea what I'm going to do, just do research, find vulnerabilities, and go and talk at conferences. And keep in mind, this was still 2009, 2010, if I remember. Uh, Cybersecurity was still not mainstream yet. When you went to conferences like DEF CON, Black Hat, you would kind of only find people really, really interested in hacking and cybersecurity. You did not have, the mainstream tourists. You did not have news channels talking about hackers and hacking. You did not have newspapers covering it, none of that stuff. So this seemed like a very unconventional path that I had kind of taken. Anyway, went to my parents' home. And interestingly, when I was leaving Airtight, a lot of people used to ask me, hey, Vivek, how do you write your tools? How do you do these different things? And I used to do some training sessions for others. And finally, so many people started coming to me that I decided just to shoot some videos. And incredibly, I created a set of videos on raw socket programming, a bunch of other things. And I said, you know what, let's just put it up on a website. So uh, before I even started securitystube.net, I put it up on a site called securityfreak.net, which when I went to my parents' place, I converted into securitystube.net. And all I did the whole day was research to my heart's content, pick up topics I really enjoyed, went absolutely deep technical, figured out how to break things, write code around it, and whatnot. And then I used to just make videos and put it out on securitystube.net, absolutely for free. I think I never really expected anything from it. Honestly, I was just overjoyed that I got an opportunity to work on what I felt was great work, which was hacking research and writing vulnerabilities and presenting at conferences. But lo and behold, very quickly, the readership on the site started growing like anything. Like back in those days, by 2010, we were getting somewhere around 110, 120,000 unique visitors a month. And people were, commenting like crazy. People were enjoying those videos, requesting me to build more things and whatnot. So that was when I kind of realized that probably I had a knack for teaching things and people enjoyed it. So at that time, different IT academies from around the world started contacting me and saying, hey, Vivek, many of our trainers are actually using your videos. Unfortunately, they can't practically demonstrate the attacks you're talking about. Could you please come down and actually do a training for us and we'll pay you? So at that time, I was in India. I mean, we all know exchange rate is always is a nice thing if you, of course, earn outside. So I felt, hey, this was good. I could probably do a couple of trainings in a year, make enough money so that it's equivalent to what my salary would have been. And I still get to do all this fun security research, go around, talk at places and whatnot. So 2010, 11, I think I must have traveled in those 2 years like 20, 25 countries. Every place where people invited me to speak, to train, I just went. And I don't even know if I was ever back home because I just remember myself going from one airport to the other. And unlike many of you guys of this generation, I was even not even interested much in going around these cities or whatnot. I should just get to the airport, go to the training venue, train, go back to the airport, and then just figure out where else I was going. So I would say that was the soft start of my entrepreneurial journey. My whole family is from a service background. Both my parents used to work in banks. So there was no one really kind of for me where I would kind of feel like, oh, I have to be an entrepreneur. Honestly, I didn't even think I wanted to be an entrepreneur, to be frank. It was just purely accidental that these trainings started generating some revenue, and I then felt, what if I could earn enough money that I could do what I wanted for the rest of my life, right? And that is one of the points I would want to leave you with is if you start your journey as an entrepreneur, I think the very first success milestone as an entrepreneur is really, can you buy the right to be an entrepreneur for the rest of your life, right? Which is, could you get to some level of financial success where this could just work out forever? So I guess with that in mind, I came back, and in Bombay City, I had started the very first, I would say, office. And that was really when, securitytube.net had free videos. I created SecurityTube training, which eventually became Pentester Academy. And by then, the business had grown. I think at peak, we had around 35 to 40 employees in India. We also had a US office, where we had around 10 to 15 full-time people as well, based out of Sunnyvale in Silicon Valley in California. Uh, I think Pentester Academy grew quite well. We had, I think, a lot of the Fortune 500 companies, defense agencies, the US Department of Defense, Air Force, all of these guys were our customers. A lot of the banks in the US and worldwide. So I think, if I recall, around 85% of our customers were US based, around 5 to 6% from India, and the rest of the world kind of like followed. So as Pentester Academy started growing, I quickly also figured like I probably enjoyed the research part quite a lot as well, right? Like, and that was something I missed, as the company grew and I had to go ahead and play more of an executive role, not just a hacker. Anyway, fast forward, COVID hit. And when COVID hit, unusually everybody just went back home. More and more people started using Pentester Academy. Our growth accelerated, not the best way I would have wanted the company to grow at such a bad time, but that's what happened. And eventually we got acquired by INE, which is funded by Providence Equity, one of the largest private equity funds based out of New York. And post that, some of you may kind of know that I also created a hacker comic where I came up with an Indian hacker hero / vigilante. And that is something I put out as, hackers, superheroes of the digital age. If you guys haven't heard about it or read about it, you could go to vrncomics.com. There's a free PDF which you could kind of go ahead and read and let me know what you think. Apart from that, I guess once I took a little bit of break after the acquisition, that's when I decided to start my existing company, SquareX, which is a pure cybersecurity product company. We raised a bit of financing from Sequoia Capital, Southeast Asia. And right now we are building a product which will have a consumer security angle and eventually an enterprise angle, primarily in the browser security market. So the whole thought process really was, hey, web browsers are the primary way through which data enters and leaves your computer. And, most of us spend almost 80-90% of our times just in a web browser. And that's really where, could you make the browser more intelligent? Could you have, lightweight machine learning models running in the browser, detecting attacks, figuring things out? And that's really what SquareX is. And if this is interesting, of course, feel free to write to us to see if there's any interesting opportunity. Now, summarizing a couple of other points, I've authored a couple of books, primarily on wireless security, which are also on Amazon. I think in 2022, if I recall, Microsoft awarded me an honorary title, which is Regional Director Cybersecurity. In the whole world, there are only 150 regional directors. I think just 4 or 5 in cybersecurity. This is, of course, the very first image that I showed you, in the intro slide itself. But as I said, at peak, we had over 150 countries, people, enterprises, etc., as our customers. We got acquired 2021. Okay. So that's about my career from a hacker to an entrepreneur, kind of summarized. Let me also now talk about my cybersecurity predictions before I take questions and open it up to you guys. So I think, having been in cybersecurity now, as I said, over 22 years, I know predictions mean nothing. Almost all predictions can go wrong. So these are more directional predictions based upon what I'm seeing today. And of course, if something really crazy or majorly disruptive ends up happening, I guess none of these may anymore be valid. But I thought I'd just take a shot at describing what I'm thinking. So one thing, as most of you are seeing, technology stacks are growing more and more complex. I still remember 20 years back, if you knew, scanning, if you knew Metasploit and a bunch of other stuff, like how to use Burp Suite and whatnot, you're actually a ready pen tester to get started. Now this won't work for you. So really where the world is headed is super specialization. So now it's not even that you specialize in cybersecurity, you will have to choose a subsection where you basically say, you know what, I know API security in and out in web application security, which is part of cybersecurity, right? And I think increasingly what I'm seeing in the field is there is a lot more demand for people who are super specialized in a topic which everybody probably gets affected by, right? Cloud security, things like that. Now, I know the word AI has become kind of a bit of a cliche, but as we are all seeing, AI is making automation better, faster. Uh, the gap with which, like, what can be automated is closing, is kind of going ahead and growing shorter and shorter. And that's really where I feel like most simple task based jobs like running scans and whatnot, much of them are automated with an AI layer on top. Inferences and even lightweight report writing is also all going to be automated. So I feel like if you really want to compete in the cybersecurity job economy, you probably need to kind of attack the higher super specialization layers, like I mentioned before. Interestingly, a very new, I would say, a old but kind of enhanced genre of attacks which are going to happen are content based ones. Now, for a long time, we've all seen phishing emails, with broken grammar and English and whatnot. And that's really where now we are seeing that completely shift over to deep fakes, videos, phone calls, whatnot. And this is going to bring up an entirely new generation of attacks, which I feel the current security products as well as security consultants, IT folks, and all of those great folks have absolutely no idea or clue how to begin detecting, stopping, etc. The other prediction I have is you are going to see more attack teams than solo attackers. And this is very intuitive if we agree that you'd have to be super specialized in the future, to be valuable. So now imagine if an attack were to transcend across multiple technology stacks, it would be impossible for a single person to possess that level of deep knowledge in all of those topics. And hence I feel attack teams are probably going to be more the norm than solo attackers who probably know things across multiple stacks and verticals to extremely good depth. I feel consumer security is going to be attacked in a very disproportionate way in the very beginning. Is simply because almost all of consumer security today hinges on antiviruses and anti-malware, and they absolutely aren't prepared for the new kind of generation of threats emanating from the web browser, emanating because of AI, deep fakes, and whatnot. Finally, the last two, of course, more closer to my heart. I actually feel like when I started 2022 years back, there were barely any Indian hackers or researchers. I'm very, very happy to see how the entire ecosystem has developed over the last few years, especially. So I feel like Indian hackers, researchers are already at par and may actually eventually even be better than global counterparts. And this is similar to how the whole development team and the entire IT industry kind of developed, right? In the very beginning, 20-25 years back, only very bad, very basic outsourced work used to be sent to India. But now, if you look at it, Indian developers, Indian startups are actually building products at global scale, in deep tech topics, including AI, cybersecurity, whatnot. And I feel that cybersecurity research is also progressing that way, where you'll find more Indian researchers publishing world level exploits and attacks, where I think 20-25% of all the top conferences would have Indian researchers as their, top speakers, panel discussions, if whatnot. Finally, I think we've basically always been focused on serving the world, and that's what the entire Indian, I would say, technology industry has done for the last few years. But increasingly, I feel like a lot of our time is also now going to go towards solving India problems, solving Indian business specific problems. And that's simply because everything is just becoming digital, and digital security is now mandatory, not optional. Anyway, I don't know, I'm kind of like 3 minutes over my time. I want to leave time for Q&A as well. So that is a very quick, fast summary of my entire career, hacker to entrepreneur, and where I feel cybersecurity is headed. So I'm happy to take any questions. So I'm going to take a look and see which one I want to answer first. Okay, so Manan has asked a question, which is, wanted to ask you, I'm getting into entrepreneurship. I want to know in coming 5 years, what will be the best thing to do in terms of launching a product-based company or service-based? I feel like if you, the bigger question is, do you want to start a company bootstrapped, or are you planning to raise funds from an investor? Now, I'm not going to get into a debate of which is better or why, but I would say that if you plan to start a bootstrapped company, and unless, of course, you have, rich friends, there is high likelihood that you're going to have to earn the initial part of the money, which you can reinvest in the business to start a product-based company, almost entirely by doing services. So it just depends where you're at, which phase you're at, and what you want to do. I think if your product-based company is like a SaaS workflow product, which you and your co-founders can very easily build, then I think you might not require too much investment, and you can probably get started yourself. Okay, let's try to. Okay, so the next question is from Aditya. I don't know if this is visible. Okay, he's asking, which hostel am I from IITG? It's been 24 years. I remember I was in Kapili Hostel. I was also in Manas, I think, because we had to change hostels every 2 years, if I recall. I was never in Dihing. Brings back fond memories. Okay. Then I think there's a question about what was the roles for the 34 people in Pentester Academy? Okay. So primarily among the 34 people in India, I think we had almost 12 to 13 people who were a mix of, senior people, interns, etc., working on cybersecurity research. Then we had a lot of people who were doing customer support, because we had so many users from around the world. And then, of course, you had the typical finance, administration, and all of those roles as well. Okay, I'm going to go down and see what are the other questions. Okay, what does SquareX do exactly? Is it like an online VPN? So, I mean, I don't want to make the session about SquareX, but really SquareX is in the domain of browser security. And what we are trying to do is create an extension as well as a secure web gateway, which together can actually solve most of the web attacks on the client side, as well as do lightweight machine learning and AI-based detection on the browser using an extension. Now, alongside with that, we also have isolation technologies, which we are integrating so that, unlike existing security products, which ban access anytime they suspect something is malicious, with SquareX, you can still open those files or websites and, surf fearlessly. So is it like an online VPN? No, it isn't. Do we run a virtual machine? No, we don't. On the cloud side, we actually run lightweight containers, which we've kind of engineered from the grounds up. And that is really where those browser workloads and all of those end up kind of running. I know I'm kind of giving you a very brief answer. For the rest, you can check out sqrx.com and take a look at that. I have a lot of people uh, thanking me for work and all of that. Really appreciate all those sweet comments. Does funding winter apply to cybersecurity startups? That's a good question, Sai. I feel like cybersecurity and AI, at least in my experience, hasn't been as affected as workflow SaaS, fintech, and a lot of those other domains. And I was in Silicon Valley for over 6 to 8 weeks, just a month back. Meeting investors, meeting founders. I see that people's excitement around cybersecurity companies hasn't come down even a little bit. And I would say if any of you are planning to raise a seed round, you should probably go down to Silicon Valley, try to meet angels and people. Uh, who knows? You might actually get a very good mentor or somebody to support you. Okay. I have a question from Shubham. I'm founder of Vuln Detox, a security service provider. A few clients, I'm facing difficulties nowadays reaching and assisting clients. How can I overcome this phase? What would be right? This is a very tricky question because it depends a lot on what you're pitching, how you're pitching, who are your competitors. So what I would recommend is make sure that your ideal customer profile, or ICP as they call it, is very, very well defined, and you try your very best to reach out to decision makers within those organizations. uh, the most common reason why I've seen deals fail is either the customer is not your ICP, which is he does not have a burning need, which only your product can solve, and hence there is no urgency from his perspective, or you find the right client who ideally should be buying from you, but now you've gotten somewhere in that, stuck in that bad bureaucracy, where unfortunately your product isn't being bubbled up to even the right decision makers. So I think these two. The third, I would say, if you can prepare, a very good collateral presentations or even video demos around what your product does, make it easy for clients to quickly understand, that, as well as what your, competitive advantages are compared to others. But feel free to write to me, Vivek at SquareX, and happy to kind of like give you more details around it. Okay. Here is one. So are roles like SOC L1 at risk due to AI? Yeah, I would actually say almost all beginner level roles across the whole cybersecurity industry, frankly, across many technology industries, eventually will be at risk, if not from AI, definitely from some kind of automation. So it is absolutely expected that every youngster is going to start at t equal to 0, right? But the important thing is for you to graduate from there, where, as I said, as you start to super specialize on certain things, it will become more and more difficult to replace you with basic or advanced automation, or even with AI, right? Because much of the learning models still today learn from human data. We still haven't reached AGI, which OpenAI and all of these guys are trying to do. I guess once we hit AGI, I don't know, but as of now, that's what my answer is. Okay, let me go down. Let's see what are the other questions. And Sai, feel free to kind of post any questions you think are interesting on the screen, and I can answer while I scroll through as well. Okay, I'll answer your question, Sai. As an entrepreneur, what are some of the most frustrating moments you went through? Like, is it hiring? I probably take that one. Is it hiring, non-payment from clients, scaling, etc.? How do you deal with it? Yeah. So I would say, interestingly, being a hacker and an entrepreneur are not very far away. So how many of you have done research where you're trying to do different things, or pen testing where you're trying to do hundreds of different things but isn't working, and then after a day, 2 days, 3 days, you finally end up, reaching your goal, finding a bug bounty, somewhere around that. So I think entrepreneurship is just that, which is, there are so many unknown cases that you really don't know what you're hitting. And, I would say patience is something you would probably have to develop. Very difficult when you're younger because you haven't seen enough of hard life yet. I'm sure some of you have. I wouldn't debate that. But most of you haven't. So the older I get, I think the more patient I get, because I understand that no matter how eager or excited I might be to make myself successful, to make my company successful, the world will work on its own clock. And of course that means, you can't be too pushy, you can't get behind people where it's all about you. So you really have to learn to be patient. I would say my philosophy is very simple: go ahead and execute with extreme urgency on a daily basis, but have the patience to defer rewards for, as long as you possibly can, right? Now, hiring, non-payment of clients. So the good thing, at least for pen tester, was that because we were education SaaS company, people paid us in advance. So I've never faced non-payment from clients, and I'm kind of like thankful I did not have to. Hiring is always a challenge. Finding great people, who are aligned with what you want to do, who fit in the company culture, is difficult. Retaining great people is even more difficult. And unfortunately, kind of going ahead and parting ways when things don't work, I would say is the most difficult and sometimes very, very sad. Okay, what other questions? Feel free to. Okay, one quick question. Is it important to get a right business partner or a friend to support? Because sometimes I feel alone to work and handle so many things. Yeah, I think, Shom, that's a great question. I would say, if your relationship with someone evolves where they're involved with your business and you start feeling that they've earned the respect to become a co-founder, or go in that path, only then do it. I know, a lot of startup incubators, Y Combinator, whoever, always says, oh, the first thing you should do is go find a co-founder because it's so hard. I can tell you, uh, if you end up finding the wrong co-founder, your company will absolutely go ahead and shut down, even before you get an opportunity to hit the market, build a product, get customers, whatnot. And I've seen so many people, unfortunately, fail because of that. I feel you can be a lone warrior. Of course, you own probably now 100% of the company by being that. But that also means you're probably doing 16, 18 hours a day, shouldering all responsibilities. I would say start there. Try to see if you can find people along the way who love what you do, who are equally excited, and you've worked with them a little bit of time in the journey where you feel comfortable enough to offer them a part of your company. Because once you do that, it can't be taken away. And co-founder problems is the biggest issue in most companies, right? uh, in Pentester Academy, I had a great team of people, who I literally would kind of call co-founders, and in SquareX as well. But as a founder, I've kept it solo, is simply because, I feel like it just plays to my personality. I like to make decisions fast. Uh, I have a very strong opinion about certain things where I feel like if there is disagreement, then typically even a company could end up collapsing and whatnot. So that part, at least I would say, go solo if that's what you feel is right for the company and you. Uh, how to find and apply to these internships from a. So, Smeet, I would say, don't worry about your college, whether it is tier 2, tier 3. I think personally, I've found that college barely dictates how good a person is. My advice is the following, right? When I look for people, when they apply for internships, or my team does now, I primarily look for the projects you have done outside of your classwork. So, have you built something very interesting which you put up on GitHub? Have you written some very insightful blogs? So, data never lies. And I always ask younger people when I hire them is, show me the data, right? Show me a great technical blog post you've written. Show me a tool you've written. Show me some very interesting talk that you may have given. And I think all of those are great data points. And in my humble view, you should probably only take up an internship in a place where those things are valued, and not purely, where you study or what your academic marks are. Not to entirely discount them, but at least to me, that is not the only thing that I would look at. Okay, how would you suggest a newcomer in cybersecurity start if he or she wants to start their career? Started with THM, Hack the Box. Now, this again is a very difficult question, and I'll tell you why. The teaching aids you choose sometimes completely change your perspective on how you feel you should be learning a topic. My suggestion is, technology is getting so complex that the prerequisite for cybersecurity is probably that you're good in computer science. So if you're really young, you're at a university, I would suggest take your computer science, operating systems, programming courses very, very seriously, because that will help you completely demystify, untangle extremely complex cybersecurity problems. Now, I'll tell you, my greatest strength was I knew electronics, but I knew comp science really well by the time, I was out of college, a couple of years in, and I was a very good programmer. So these things together just allowed me to solve complex problems in cybersecurity, find attacks and vulnerabilities, which I felt a lot of the folks could not, because at some point they just lost that depth and couldn't go below a certain level because they just didn't have the background. Okay. Is the only way to assemble the dream team is to hire fast, fire fast is a good strategy? I would actually say I'm not fully aligned with the hire fast, fire fast thing, because okay, let me retract and basically say it's first important to understand culturally where you're hiring, right? So in America, hire fast, fire fast, or get hired fast and quit a job if it doesn't work out, I think kind of does work. And culturally, everybody's okay with it, right? Like, okay, I've joined this job, I'm not performing, I got fired, and that's fine, I'll move on. Or I've joined this job, I don't think I'm enjoying, I'm going to just quit tomorrow morning. But I feel for many other cultures, this isn't that Boolean. Personally, here is what I like to do. I try my very best to screen the candidate as much as I can during the interview process. And if we do hire somebody, I try my best to see if they can integrate within the organization, to help them overcome challenges, to give them time, and then to see if it is still working. Now, what I personally have almost zero tolerance for is when I find that people are indulging in politics, or people aren't putting in a good amount of hard work when they don't know something and they aren't eager to learn. So all of these are very big turnoffs for me, because I feel like if you join a place, responsibility lies with both parties. As a company, you need to be given a very conducive learning environment, great peers who are helpful, but at the very same time, you also need to put in just the same amount of work. What do you feel about bug bounty programs? So many of them are not getting investment. I would say bug bounty platforms are a great way to get started, but I would at the very same time say, don't spend all your time on bug bounty platforms. Historically, almost all bug bounty platforms eventually had to also do the group sourced pen testing vulnerability assessment thing. Is simply because I think as businesses, they were never able to scale beyond a certain stage. So if you have all your chips into doing bug bounties full time, I hope you're really good at it, right? I mean, I remember Anand Prakash from Ping Safe. I even invested in his company. was really, really good. And, he's won a bunch of bounties and whatnot. So I feel for some guys like him, it really worked out. Uh, but for many, it probably doesn't. So yeah, I mean, those are my 2 cents around that. Okay, you've given many amazing talks at conferences, taught so many people. What is the mindset of a speaker? How do you convey the content in a simpler way? Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Uh, so my philosophy of talking and teaching is simply, you know, how much of investment in your mind are you doing to that activity? So when I used to give my trainings, I used to show up at 9, be in the training room till like 7 p.m., even spend 2 to 3 more hours later if the participants were not able to pick up. And many of them used to come to me and ask me, hey, Vivek, uh, why do you spend this extra time? And I used to tell them, like, hey, for me, is as if I'm teaching my own brother or sister. That's how much I'm invested in making sure that you guys succeed, because I take great pride in everything I do. And if you've come to my class, I want you to leave with an experience you've never had before, which you will remember forever. And hopefully, if you learn and this helps you in some way, hey, I've done my job as a teacher, as a speaker. So I would say, take any public appearance, whether teaching or training, very, very seriously. Put your heart and soul to it, and it'll always like come back. Okay. So I think almost run out of time. So thank you so much, everyone. If you have any further questions, feel free to write in, Vivek@squarex.com, or tag me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I'll try my best to answer. Okay, so Anangsha is back.
Yes. Thank you so much, Vivek, for that amazing talk, sharing your insights, and being so patient with answering the questions from our attendees. I'm sure
Absolutely.
everyone had a great time.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And, enjoy the rest of the conference. And, Anangsha, Sai, thanks so much again for inviting me and putting together such a great conference. Looking forward to being part of this event, year over year. Take care. Thank you.
Okay, Vivek, thank you so much.